You're about to discover why that innocent-looking granola bar you've been giving your grandchildren could be silently damaging their developing brains right now. I'm going to share 11 foods that most grandparents serve with love but unknowingly harm the children they adore most. And before you click away thinking this is just another fear-mongering video, stay with me because what I'm revealing today is backed by decades of research in developmental psychology and pediatric nutrition, and I guarantee you're feeding your grandchildren at least 3 of these foods regularly. Let me start with something shocking. That whole grain bread you proudly serve because you think it's healthy, it might be one of the worst things you're giving them. Here's what actually happens inside your grandchild's body when they eat modern commercial bread. The moment that bread hits their mouth, enzymes in their saliva begin breaking down the starches into simple sugars. Within 15 minutes of swallowing, their blood glucose levels spike dramatically. Their pancreas immediately releases a flood of insulin to handle this sugar tsunami. But here's the critical part most people miss. This isn't just about sugar and energy. When blood glucose spikes this rapidly in a child's body, it triggers an inflammatory cascade throughout their entire system, including their brain. A 2019 study published in the American Journal of Clinical Nutrition followed over 2,000 children for 5 years and found that those who consumed refined grains regularly showed measurably lower cognitive performance on standardized tests compared to children who ate whole, unprocessed carbohydrates. The researchers discovered that these repeated glucose spikes actually impaired the function of the hippocampus, the brain region responsible for learning and memory formation. Your grandchild's ability to learn at school is being compromised every time you serve them that sandwich on white bread, or even most store-bought whole wheat bread, which is often just white bread with caramel coloring added. But the damage doesn't stop there. When insulin floods a child's system repeatedly throughout the day, their cells gradually become less responsive to it. This is called insulin resistance, and we used to think it only affected adults. Wrong. Research from Boston Children's Hospital published in 2021 shows that insulin resistance is now appearing in children as young as 5 years old. These children show early markers of metabolic dysfunction that sets them up for a lifetime of health problems, from obesity to type 2 diabetes to cardiovascular disease. And it starts with the seemingly innocent foods grandparents serve with the best intentions. Now, I'm going to tell you about something even more insidious later in this video, a food that's marketed specifically to children that contains a compound that actually crosses the blood-brain barrier and disrupts neurotransmitter function. But first, let me continue with what happens with these refined grains. The second food is fruit juice, even the ones that claim to be 100% juice with no added sugar. I know you think you're doing something good by giving your grandchild orange juice at breakfast. You're thinking about vitamin C, right? Here's what you're not thinking about. When you take an orange and juice it, you remove all the fiber that naturally slows down sugar absorption. What you're left with is essentially sugar water with some vitamins thrown in. An 8-ounce glass of orange juice contains approximately 21 grams of sugar. That's more sugar than in a glazed donut from most bakeries. Let me explain the mechanism. When your grandchild drinks that juice, the fructose, the sugar found in fruit, goes straight to their liver. Unlike glucose, which every cell in the body can use, fructose can only be metabolized by the liver. When the liver receives a large dose of fructose all at once, without the fiber that would normally slow its absorption, the liver converts much of it directly into fat through a process called de novo lipogenesis. This isn't just creating a little extra padding. This process generates triglycerides that accumulate in the liver itself, leading to non-alcoholic fatty liver disease, a condition that was virtually unheard of in children 30 years ago and is now appearing in kids as young as 8. A landmark study from the University of California, San Francisco demonstrated that when children consumed just 1 serving of fruit juice daily for 2 weeks, their liver fat content increased by an average of 32%. The researchers also found increased levels of inflammatory markers in their bloodstream. This inflammation doesn't stay localized. It circulates throughout the entire body, affecting everything from their immune system to their brain development. The lead researcher, Dr. Robert Lustig, has called fructose in liquid form poison for children's metabolisms, and the data supports this strong statement. But here's what really concerns me as someone who spent 40 years studying child development: the impact on behavior and mood regulation. When blood sugar spikes and crashes repeatedly throughout the day, children experience corresponding mood swings. They become irritable, unfocused, and emotionally dysregulated. How many grandchildren are being labeled as having behavioral problems when really They're just riding a blood sugar roller coaster created by well-meaning adults? Take a moment and comment below what country or state you're watching from. I'm curious to see how widespread these feeding practices are, and I'll be sharing some shocking regional differences in childhood health outcomes later in this video that might surprise you. The third food might shock you even more: low-fat and fat-free dairy products. You grew up during the low-fat craze, when everyone was told that fat was the enemy. That advice has been thoroughly debunked, but many grandparents still operate under those outdated guidelines. When you give your grandchild skim milk or low-fat yogurt, here's what happens. First, fat is essential for children's brain development. The human brain is approximately 60% fat by dry weight. The myelin sheaths that insulate neurons and allow for rapid signal transmission are made primarily of fat. When children don't get adequate dietary fat, particularly during the critical developmental windows of early childhood, their neurological development is compromised. A study published in the Journal of Pediatrics in 2020 followed children from ages 2 to 10 and found that those who consumed full-fat dairy products had lower rates of obesity and better cognitive test scores than those who consumed low-fat or non-fat dairy. This seems counterintuitive until you understand the mechanism. Fat triggers satiety signals in the brain. When children eat fat with their meals, they feel satisfied and naturally stop eating. When you remove the fat, they don't get those satiety signals, so they eat more overall calories, typically in the form of carbohydrates and sugars. But there's another problem with low-fat dairy products that most people never consider. When manufacturers remove fat from dairy, they often add sugar to improve the taste. That low-fat flavored yogurt you think is healthy? Read the label. Many contain more sugar per servings than ice cream. You're essentially feeding your grandchild a dessert while thinking you're providing a nutritious snack. And remember that cycle I described earlier with blood sugar spikes, insulin surges, and inflammatory cascades? You're triggering all of that with every spoonful. The fourth food is processed breakfast cereals, even the ones with pictures of whole grains on the box. These are essentially refined carbohydrates with synthetic vitamins sprayed on at the end of manufacturing. When your grandchild eats a bowl of cereal, even the healthy brands marketed to parents, their body processes it almost identically to eating pure sugar. A study from the Environmental Working Group analyzed 84 popular children's cereals and found that one serving of many popular brands contained more sugar than 3 chocolate chip cookies. But the problem goes beyond just sugar content. Many breakfast cereals contain high amounts of sodium, which affects children differently than adults. Children's kidneys are still developing and are less efficient at filtering excess sodium. High sodium intake in childhood has been linked to increased blood pressure, even in children as young as 6. A 2018 study in Hypertension Journal found that children who regularly consumed high-sodium processed foods showed arterial stiffness, an early marker of cardiovascular disease, by age 10. And here's something I'll reveal later that connects to this. There's a specific additive found in many breakfast cereals that disrupts the gut microbiome in ways that affect mood, immune function, and even behavior. I'll explain exactly which additive and the mechanism behind it shortly. The fifth food is deli meats and processed meats like hot dogs, bologna, and packaged ham. I know these are convenient, and kids often like them. But here's what you need to understand. These products contain nitrates and nitrites, preservatives that prevent bacterial growth and give the meat its pink color. In the acidic environment of the stomach, especially when combined with the amino acids in meat, these compounds convert into nitrosamines, which are potent carcinogens. The World Health Organization has classified processed meats as Group 1 carcinogens, meaning there's sufficient evidence they cause cancer in humans, specifically colorectal cancer. But the risk isn't just in adulthood. A study published in the International Journal of Cancer in 2021 found that children who consumed processed meats more than 3 times per week had significantly higher levels of DNA damage in their cells compared to children who rarely ate these products. This damage is cumulative. Every hot dog, every bologna sandwich is adding to their lifetime cancer risk. But there's an immediate effect too. Processed meats are extremely high in sodium and saturated fats. They contribute to the inflammatory burden in children's bodies, and they often contain added sugars, corn syrup, and various chemical additives that further disrupt normal metabolic function. When you look at the actual ingredient list on a package of deli turkey, you'll often see 15 or 20 ingredients. Turkey should have 1 ingredient: turkey. Comment below if you've been regularly feeding your grandchildren any of these first 5 foods. Don't feel guilty. Almost every grandparent has done this because we simply weren't taught this information. But now you know better, and I promise by the end of this video, you'll have clear alternatives that your grandchildren will actually enjoy eating. The 6th food is margarine and vegetable oil spreads. Many of you switched from butter to margarine decades ago when doctors said butter would clog your arteries. That advice was based on flawed science funded largely by the vegetable oil industry. Margarine is created through a process called hydrogenation, where liquid vegetable oils are blasted with hydrogen gas under high pressure to make them solid at room temperature. This process creates trans fats, even in products that claim to be trans fat free. Current FDA regulations allow products with less than 0.5 grams of trans fat per serving to be labeled as zero trans fat. Trans fats are genuinely toxic to the human body. They incorporate themselves into cell membranes, making the membranes rigid and dysfunctional. This affects every cell in the body, but it's particularly damaging to neurons in the developing brain. A study from UC San Diego published in 2015 found that higher trans fat consumption was associated with measurably worse memory function across all age groups, but the effects were most pronounced in younger people whose brains were still developing. Even modern margarines that don't contain trans fats are still highly processed. Industrial seed oils, omega-6 fatty acids that promote inflammation when consumed in excess. The ratio of omega-6 to omega-3 fatty acids in the typical American diet is approximately 20.1. It should be closer to 4.1 or even 2.1. This imbalance creates a pro-inflammatory state throughout the body. For children, this manifests as increased rates of allergies, asthma, eczema, and behavioral issues. The seventh food is flavored milk, particularly chocolate milk. Schools serve this to millions of children every day, and grandparents often use it as a compromise to get kids to drink milk. Here's the problem. An 8-ounce serving of chocolate milk contains approximately 25 grams of added sugar. That's 6 teaspoons of sugar. To put that in perspective, the American Heart Association recommends that children ages 2 to 18 consume no more than 25 grams of added sugar per entire day. One glass of chocolate milk maxes out their recommended intake. But beyond the sugar content, there's another issue. Chocolate milk often contains carrageenan, a common food additive derived from seaweed that's used as a thickener. Animal studies have consistently shown that carrageenan causes gastrointestinal inflammation and may trigger inflammatory bowel disease. A review published in Environmental Health Perspectives found that even food-grade carrageenan causes intestinal inflammation and glucose intolerance. The researchers specifically noted concerns about consumption by children whose gut barriers are more permeable than adults. Now here's that information I promised earlier about an additive that crosses the blood-brain barrier. Many flavored milks, along with countless other processed foods marketed to children, contain artificial food dyes. The most common are Red 40, Yellow 5, and Yellow 6. These petroleum-derived chemicals cross the blood-brain barrier and interfere with neurotransmitter function. A meta-analysis published in the Journal of the American Academy of Child and Adolescent Psychiatry in 2012 found significant associations between artificial food coloring consumption and hyperactivity in children, even in children without ADHD diagnoses. The European Union requires warning labels on foods containing these dyes, stating they may have an adverse effect on activity and attention in children. In the United States, we just keep feeding them to kids. How many children are struggling with focus and behavior issues that could be significantly improved simply by eliminating artificial dyes from their diet? The eighth food is prepackaged snack cakes, cookies, and pastries. These products are engineered in food laboratories to be hyperpalatable, meaning they're designed to override your natural satiety signals and make you want to keep eating. They combine sugar, fat, and salt in precise ratios that trigger dopamine release in the brain's reward centers, creating a mild addictive response. A study from the University of Michigan used the Yale Food Addiction Scale and found that highly processed foods, particularly those high in both fat and refined carbohydrates, triggered addictive-like eating behaviors in children. The researchers found that certain foods, including cookies, ice cream, and chips, activated the same brain regions that are activated by drugs of abuse. When you regularly give your grandchildren these foods, you're literally training their brains to crave them. These products also contain what I call the unholy trinity of modern processed foods: high fructose corn syrup, partially hydrogenated oils, and artificial additives. Each of these individually causes metabolic problems. Together, they create a synergistic effect that's even worse. High fructose corn syrup drives fat accumulation in the liver. Partially hydrogenated oils disrupt cell membrane function. Artificial additives trigger inflammation and may disrupt the gut microbiome. Speaking of the gut microbiome, this is that connection I mentioned earlier. Your grandchild's gut contains trillions of bacteria that play crucial roles in digestion, immune function, and even mood regulation. The gut-brain axis is a real, measurable phenomenon. The bacteria in the gut produce neurotransmitters like serotonin and GABA that directly affect brain function. Approximately 90% of the body's serotonin is produced in the gut. When children consume highly processed foods filled with additives, preservatives, and artificial sweeteners, it disrupts the balance of gut bacteria. A 2019 study in Cell found that common food additives, including emulsifiers and artificial sweeteners, significantly altered the composition of gut bacteria in ways that promoted inflammation and metabolic dysfunction. Children with disrupted gut microbiomes show higher rates of anxiety, depression, and behavioral problems. The ninth food is sports drinks and energy drinks. I'm seeing more grandparents giving these to grandchildren after sports activities, or even just as regular beverages. This is alarming. A 20-ounce bottle of a typical sports drink contains 34 grams of sugar and artificial food dyes. Unless your grandchild is engaging in intense physical activity for more than 90 minutes, they don't need to replenish electrolytes. They need water. Energy drinks are even worse. Many contain caffeine levels equivalent to multiple cups of coffee, along with high amounts of sugar and stimulants like guarana and taurine. The American Academy of Pediatrics states that energy drinks should never be consumed by children or adolescents. A study published in Pediatrics in 2018 documented multiple cases of children experiencing cardiac arrhythmias, seizures, and other serious adverse events after consuming energy drinks. Caffeine affects children differently than adults because their bodies metabolize it more slowly. A dose of caffeine that an adult would clear in 4 to 6 hours can remain in a child's system for 12 to 14 hours. This disrupts their sleep, and sleep is when children's brains consolidate learning and memories. Chronic poor sleep in childhood is associated with lower academic performance, behavioral problems, and increased risk of obesity. The 10th food is instant noodles and ramen products. These are cheap, convenient, and kids often love them. They're also nutritional disasters. One package of instant ramen contains approximately 1,120 milligrams of sodium. That's more than the recommended daily maximum for an adult, let alone a child. The seasoning packets are essentially salt, MSG, and artificial flavors. But here's what really concerns me. A study from Baylor University and Harvard followed over 10,000 people and found that women who consumed instant noodles twice a week or more had a 68% higher risk of metabolic syndrome, which includes increased blood pressure, blood sugar, and cholesterol levels. While this study focused on adults, the metabolic effects begin accumulating in childhood. Instant noodles are also deep-fried before packaging, and the oil used is typically a low-quality industrial seed oil high in omega-6 fatty acids. These oils oxidize during frying and storage, creating compounds that promote inflammation and oxidative stress in the body. And the noodles themselves are refined wheat flour with almost no nutritional value, causing the same rapid blood sugar spike we discussed earlier. The 11th and final food might surprise you: fruit snacks and gummy vitamins. These seem healthy because they have fruit in the name or because they're vitamins, right? Wrong. Fruit snacks are essentially candy. They contain fruit juice concentrate, which is just another form of sugar combined with gelatin or pectin, more sugar, and artificial dyes. There's virtually no actual fruit in them. They're chewy candy that parents and grandparents feel less guilty about giving to children. Gummy vitamins present a different problem. Yes, they contain vitamins, but they also contain multiple grams of sugar per gummy. To get the recommended dose of vitamins, children often need to eat 2 to 4 gummies, meaning they're consuming significant sugar along with their vitamins. And here's something most people don't know. Gummy vitamins are poorly regulated. A study by ConsumerLab.com tested dozens of gummy vitamins and found that many didn't contain the amounts of vitamins listed on the label. Some contained contaminants, and virtually all contained added sugars and artificial ingredients. But there's an even bigger issue with these gummy products. They stick to teeth. The chewy, sticky texture means they adhere to tooth enamel for extended periods, creating a perfect environment for bacteria to feed on sugar and produce the acids that cause cavities. Dentists report that they're seeing increased rates of severe tooth decay in children, and frequent consumption of gummy products is a contributing factor. Now let me tell you what to do instead. First, understand that you don't need to be perfect. The goal isn't to never let your grandchildren enjoy treats. The goal is to make sure that most of what they eat, most of the time, is real food that nourishes their growing bodies and brains. For breakfast, instead of cereal or pastries, serve eggs. Eggs are nature's perfect protein package. They contain choline, which is essential for brain development, along with high-quality protein and healthy fats. Make scrambled eggs with cheese or create fun omelets with vegetables. If your grandchildren don't like eggs, try making oatmeal with real rolled oats, not instant packets. Cook it with whole milk, add a small amount of real maple syrup or honey, and top with fresh berries and a handful of chopped nuts. For snacks, offer real fruit instead of juice or fruit snacks. An apple with almond butter provides fiber, vitamins, natural sugars that are absorbed slowly because of the fiber, and healthy fats and protein from the nut butter. This combination keeps blood sugar stable and provides lasting energy. Other great snacks include vegetables with hummus, full-fat plain yogurt with fresh fruit and a drizzle of honey, or a small handful of nuts and a piece of cheese. For sandwiches, if you're going to use bread, find real whole grain bread from a bakery where you can see the actual grains in the bread. Better yet, use lettuce wraps or make roll-ups with whole grain tortillas. Instead of deli meat, use real cooked chicken that you've roasted yourself, or make turkey meatballs that you can keep in the freezer and reheat. These provide real protein without the nitrates, nitrites, and excessive sodium. For drinks, the answer is simple: water and milk. That's it. Children don't need juice, sports drinks, flavored milk, or any other beverage. If they want flavor, add slices of cucumber, berries, or citrus to water. If they'll only drink whole milk and not water, that's fine. Whole milk provides protein, fat, calcium, and vitamins without added sugars. Here's a simple rule that will transform your grandchildren's nutrition. If it comes in a package and has more than 5 ingredients, don't buy it. Real food doesn't need a long ingredient list. An apple has 1 ingredient. Chicken has 1 ingredient. Oatmeal has 1 ingredient. When you start reading labels with this mindset, you'll be shocked at how few products in the average grocery store qualify as real food. Let me give you a practical shopping strategy. Shop the perimeter of the grocery store. That's where the real food lives. Produce, meat, dairy, and eggs. The middle aisles are where the processed foods hide. When you do venture into the middle aisles for things like olive oil, rice, or dried beans, read every label and apply the 5-ingredient rule. Now I want to address something important. Some of you are thinking, but my grandchildren won't eat these healthier foods. I understand. Children's taste preferences are shaped by what they're regularly exposed to. If they've been eating highly processed, hyper-palatable foods, real food will seem bland by comparison at first. But taste preferences can change. It takes approximately 10 to 15 exposures to a new food for children to begin accepting it. Don't give up after they reject something once or twice. Also, remember that you're not their parent. You might only have them for a few hours or days at a time. In that time frame, if they're truly hungry, they will eat what you offer. Children won't starve themselves. If you offer nutritious food and they refuse it, don't make it a battle. Just put the food away and offer it again later. When they get hungry enough, they'll eat it and resist the urge to offer an alternative that's less healthy. That teaches them that if they refuse the good food, they'll eventually get the food they really want. One more critical point. You are modeling eating behaviors for your grandchildren. If you keep processed snacks in your house and eat them regularly, your grandchildren will want them too. If your pantry is filled with real food and that's what you eat yourself, that becomes normal for them. Children are incredibly perceptive. They notice if you tell them they can't have something that you're eating yourself. Let me share one final study that ties all of this together. Researchers at the University of Cambridge followed children from birth through age 7 and examined their dietary patterns and health outcomes. They found that children who consumed diets high in processed foods, sugary drinks, and refined grains had measurably smaller hippocampal volumes on MRI scans compared to children who ate diets rich in whole foods. Remember, the hippocampus is the brain region essential for learning and memory. The food you feed your grandchildren is literally shaping their brain structure. The same study found that these children with poorer diets had lower scores on standardized academic tests and higher rates of behavioral problems reported by teachers and parents. The effects persisted even after controlling for socioeconomic status, parental education, and other confounding variables. Diet was an independent predictor of brain development and function. This is why this matters so much. You're not just deciding what your grandchildren eat today. You're influencing their health trajectory for the rest of their lives. The dietary patterns established in childhood tend to persist into adulthood. Children who grow up eating processed foods often become adults who eat processed foods. Children who grow up eating real food develop taste preferences and habits that serve them throughout their entire lives. You have an incredible opportunity and responsibility credibility as grandparents. Your grandchildren trust you completely. They believe you when you tell them something is good for them. They want to please you. Use that influence wisely. Show them that food can be both nutritious and delicious. Teach them to cook simple, healthy meals. Make preparing food together a bonding activity rather than just a chore. I want to emphasize one more time. This isn't about perfection. If your grandchildren have ice cream at a birthday party or eat pizza at a friend's house, that's completely fine. Special occasions and treats are part of a balanced childhood. The problem arises when processed foods become the foundation of their daily diet, rather than occasional treats. Think about it this way. If 90% of what your grandchildren eat is real, whole food, then the 10% that's treats or processed food isn't going to cause significant harm. But when those ratios flip, when the majority of their calories come from processed foods with only occasional real food, that's when you see the health problems I've described throughout this video. Start small. You don't have to overhaul everything at once. Pick 1 or 2 of the 11 foods I've discussed and eliminate those first. Replace the fruit juice with whole fruit and water. Replace the processed breakfast cereal with eggs and whole grain toast. Once those changes feel normal and routine, tackle another 1 or 2 items. Gradual, sustainable changes are far more effective than trying to change everything overnight and then giving up because it feels overwhelming. Write down in the comments which of these 11 foods you're going to eliminate first from your grandchildren's diet. I read every comment, and I love seeing the community support each other in making these changes. And if you found this information valuable, share it with other grandparents you know. We need to spread this knowledge because the health of an entire generation of children depends on adults understanding these principles and acting on them. Your grandchildren are counting on you to protect them and nourish them. You're doing this because you love them more than anything in the world. Now you have the knowledge to show that love through the food you provide. Make the changes. Your grandchildren's brains, bodies, and futures will thank you.